Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Prolix Comics Bollix, where myself, Nick, and himself,
Finbar.
Finn, yes, is that Finbar Saunders?
No, Finbar
No,
Davis.
Finbar Davis, yeah.
Don't don't mistake me for that fool.
Okay, yes. So myself and Finbar, where we talk about comics, and so this time
It is a good
we
question though. Are they actually is Finbar actually a real name? Is anyone
think it
are
might be.
you called Finbar?
If
If
so,
so,
please,
we want to be your friend.
yeah, drop
And
a
we
line in the
promise
comments.
not just to say Fna if you befriend us. Although we
Yes,
might a little bit because we can't help
yes.
ourselves. Yeah.
Um, So yeah, we're going to talk about Richard Corben, Richard Corben's Den. We've talked about Richard Corben before. I just realized this recently because we did his adaptation of A Boy and His Dog
Right.
quite a while ago. I can't remember if we did that for Prolix Comics Bollix or if we did it for one of the other shows because
I
would
think
it fit because we talked
yeah,
about
I
the
think it
film
was Prolix
and the
Comics.
novel. So
Yes. Yeah.
we talked about all three.
I think
Um,
we were just shocked. Who would have thought that Richard Corben, and we must have done this joke back then, as I can't remember. Who would have thought Richard Corben would have done a graphic novel based on the BBC Sheepdog Trials show?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah, which my granddad, as we know, was a huge
Yeah,
fan of.
it's such a
Um,
great gag. It's worth doing it twice.
it is worth doing twice. So,
Yep,
and at the
yep,
time,
go ahead, go ahead. Yep, hey, hey.
um,
Who'd have thought you could turn that into a graphic novel?
but there you go. Corbyn's a master of the art.
Yes, yes.
So, well, I think that the big takeaway from that was we discovered that the comic was the best of the three versions, which
Did
was
we?
strange. Well, I think that is, yeah. We ultimately came down on the side that the novel was fine, the movie is good, and that the comic somehow, the pulpiness of the comic and the kind of the whole package, somehow it worked best. The
I
story
don't
seemed to
remember
work.
this at all. To be fair,
It was you who said this.
I don't
I
believe you.
disagreed with you.
I'm gonna go back and watch it, and then
Yeah, please do.
I don't
I
want to
am
be,
99% sure.
you and your notorious gaslighting.
That is true. That is true. But anyhow, so I wanted
Finbar's never been the same since.
so I wanted to do Den for a couple of reasons. One is because I wanted to shoehorn in the chance to make you watch Heavy Metal, the movie from
Right.
1981, because somehow you've never seen it
I've
before,
seen it. No.
and I'm quite interested to know because I had lack any kind of critical distance, and I'll be interested to see if you because I have no idea what you're gonna think or what like sometimes I have a sense of what Clive's gonna say or feel about something, but this is one where it could go any one of three ways, right?
Right. I'm gonna
Uh,
drag out the tension. I'm not gonna tell you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then when I was looking at it, I realized that weirdly, Den starts as a short film,
Yes.
right, in 1969, and then the first graphic novel is a sequel to a short film. I'd imagine nobody saw, and that very much
Right.
is a sequel, right?
Yes.
Like
This
that
is
establishes,
Neverwhere. Right.
yeah. So maybe we should talk about that first, I guess.
Yes. So this was apparent. So he was working at what's the name of it? Um, Calvin Studios, right? He was working.
Right.
I'm guessing as a um graphic designer or
Mhm.
like what would you call it? Like a corporate illustrator or something.
Yeah, yeah, graphic artist of some kind.
Yeah. But it was, I guessing it was an animation studio of some I'm guessing for like industrial films maybe or something like that.
Right.
And then he decides to make um it's funny to get ahead of myself here. I said this is the charming side of being an incel, right?
Right. Yes.
It's like before that became problematic, right? It's like because
Yes.
it's definitely in that kind of wish fulfillment
Oh yeah.
wheelhouse stuff, but
Hmm.
in I would say in an innocent enough way, right? In a very
Yeah. And he certainly wears his influences on his sleeve in the most like
oh yeah,
obvious way. Literally the first shot of the thing is the main character holding up a copy of the Princess of Mars, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
The first
And
of the
so
what are they called? The
Barzoom books or whatever they
Bazoom or John Carter.
of Mars, yeah.
And we should say Neverwhere, as well as being like at least a yeah, like a tenth of the running time. 100 times more entertaining than that fucking John Carter
Move Disney
film
film.
that came out. Despite having
I don't
McNulty from The Wire in it as a villain, was
I
just fucking
don't
terrible.
hate that as much as most people. I don't like
Really?
it, but I do, but I have a certain soft spot for its ridiculousness.
You see what I have to deal with, viewers.
There you go. I'm not scrounging to see it again anytime soon, but I remember being like, this is all right. But anyway, so yeah, so very much, and you mentioned on another podcast we were doing moments ago, gore, right?
John Norman, yeah.
Yeah, and there's an element of that as well, right? This idea of
A
yeah,
bit less SME, this one.
yeah, yeah. Although the comics and as it goes on, it gets like the original short film
Right.
is yeah.
Yeah, so the original short film is yeah, and also the setup is slightly different, right? So it's in this
Mhm.
version, it's a grown man who, yeah, the girl who he fancies in the office turns him down, and is so it's
Mhm.
proper incest and his
And
boss
his
is on
boss
him.
is an asshole.
Yeah, and he
Yes.
quits his job and he goes to the park and he sees some
Well, he
shiny
finds
yellow
literally
thing.
yeah, like a little or like a cursor almost because then when it
Yes.
yeah, because he takes
Unfortunately,
hold of
not
him.
voiced by Kenneth Williams. That would have been
Yes, that would have been fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so yeah, he takes this little floating light ball home
Yeah.
and it draws him a schematic for
Yes.
to build something. He goes to Radio Shack and gets the stuff and builds this little circuit board thing with 1969 technology, which rips a hole in the space-time continuum and causes a smoking hot voluptuous lady to appear who's animated. So we should say this is all live action up until this
Until,
point.
yes.
Right. And then yes, he opens a portal to Neverwhere in
It
his
also reminded me a little bit. I'm wondering how much of this influenced, and there's a few other examples you could probably think of like an alien technology being like a like a distress signal or something.
Mhm.
It's very Last Starfighter as well, isn't it? The way
Yes.
they have that arcade machine, and whoever gets the high score
Yeah.
is suddenly plucked out and becomes
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So yes, so he basically is asked by this queen of this Neverwhere to come and be her champion, and so he steps. Well, she's naked, so he decides, and she's
Yeah,
animated. I'm
yeah,
sure he's
of
like,
course, yeah.
oh, this is yeah. He's down, so he walks in, and then he becomes Den,
Yeah,
right?
he changes from Dan to Den in this one, doesn't he?
Yes.
And also becomes like a buff kind of slayer of demons or
Yeah.
shit, and protects the hot woman with big tits from lots of and that is pretty much the narrative,
The
right?
rest of the
And
running time is him running around in an animated world fighting with various.
very kind of interesting animation as well, because
Mhm.
super kind of minimal and crude, but
Yep.
also, I mean, Richard Corben clearly no has chops from it. Like there's something about the way he uses shading and stuff that like
Mhm.
really gives it character.
Yes,
Like
yes.
like as minimalist as it is, um, there's it does have,
There's a weight to it that's quite
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
more so than like something a lot more complex and shiny sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, we'll get to well, briefly mention Heavy Metal 2000 later.
Oh, you
But
watched that? Jesus.
yeah, yeah, I went
Hats
all
off.
in.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
But yeah, Neverwhere's quite charming and fun, don't you think?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And so as it turns out, the character, this is like Dan, is the uncle of the kid who appears in
Oh, is that right? In the law
yes.
or whatever.
Yeah. And so in fact he appears, I mean you may not have caught that, but original Dan appears in the Den Neverwhere comic and meets his nephew Den, and they both look identical. They're because apparently when you go through this warp, you just turn into a big,
Right,
muscly, bald, like
right.
Mr. Clean dude, with your dick hanging out. Um,
So the main attraction, and let's get to it, is the comic, right? Um,
yes.
so this appeared in not well originally it didn't appear in heavy metal, right? First it
No,
was,
it created Metal Hurlant actually.
but even before that, wasn't it?
It
Didn't it?
may have been
Wasn't it?
self-published.
Didn't it appear somewhere else and then in metal a lot, like
Let me
carried
take a
it
look.
on?
That's a good question. It says Den made his comic debut in a short comic book that appeared in Grim Wit #2 in
Yeah, there we go.
September
Yeah,
3, and then that was
because he
expanded
Corben,
in.
we mentioned it before when we did A Boy and His Sheepdog, but it started off in
Hmm,
like underground comics,
yes,
right? And
yes,
then kind of
and
gravitated over to the Metal Alert stuff.
yes, yeah, and he worked both in black and white and in color. And I will say he was somebody who really consistently pushed the boundaries of the technology of the time. Like he was
Okay.
one of the first people, and sometimes that worked and sometimes it didn't. But he was one of the first people I ever saw using computer generated imagery in comics, way before anyone else was even trying. He was like,
Right.
okay, I'm going to try to do this, but it looks rough now
Right.
because
Right.
it was at the very beginning of it. But in this case, this is more fully painted. So this is like because he is quite a gifted painter.
Oh, it
I mean,
looks fucking amazing. I
yeah,
will
and
say.
I mean, and I'm sure and you may have noticed or may not have noticed, but like when the bats show up,
Yeah.
there's a scene that's a very much a nod towards his other most famous work, right? Which is the front cover to your favorite album.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I was like, I was really digging Richard Corbin and until I came across this
Hmm.
little nugget that he was
Yes,
involved in
he did the
Twatnos.
covers.
Fucking
He
yeah.
he did the covers to the two first Steinman albums, to Battle to Hell and Bad for Good, Steinman's solo album. But
Well,
they
I
are
suppose we all
amazing.
make
They're
mistakes.
amazing covers. They are amazing pieces of art, regardless of what you think of the music. Um, but yes, it is. I mean, it's so well painted, and his mastery of like anatomy, but yet also knowing when to distort and when to make it comic-y,
Oh, it's an astonishing piece of art throughout this original run. I know it goes on a little bit further, right? But the
Well, it
original
goes
run
on quite a bit further, but this is, I
then
think, that's what you need.
collected in in graphic novel form is a thing of great beauty. And also I mean self-evident, and yeah, we a long time more of a comics head like you, but to me was a little bit of a revelation. And even though he does his own thing, it was like, oh, I can see Simon Bisley was a big
Oh,
Corbin
yes.
fan, right? Like,
No question.
yeah,
Yeah,
like, oh,
absolutely.
I didn't know that before, you
He
see.
was
So
absolutely Rich Corbin of the 1990s,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
And not to denigrate and not to take away, because like
No,
Slain Horn God is its
Simon's
own
work is
fucking work of
incredible
great
as well.
genius, and yeah,
Yeah,
but obviously also has like kind of better writing as well, right? But
because well,
um,
he's not writing himself. But you know what?
nice,
In
admit.
going back to this and in rereading it, I enjoyed the fucking made up as it goes along,
Oh yeah, yeah.
wandering, like the epic, just the landscapes, just Den just wandering around.
I dug the fuck out of Den, and it is on that
Okay.
fine line as well, because as you know with me, I do have a problem with fantasy gibbety
Yeah.
bollocks, right? But this
Yes.
has the minimal amount of growth from the planet Kikoch.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
there's no attempt at, what I like about it is there isn't a backstory. Like you
No.
don't get aeons ago there
No.
was, oh yeah, we fucking go, right? Like there was none of that. There was none of that.
No.
Just
Den.
rewriting history with stupid long
No.
names, right?
No.
So it's
Den is very
just
much your
oomph.
point,
Yeah.
and he's your point of view character. He knows nothing about the place he's in,
No,
so
no,
therefore you don't either. You just are
no.
like, oh shit, there's lizard people here, and oh
Yeah,
that
it is
grows up.
monsters and tits, and that's all she wrote, right? I mean,
Yes.
and I like that. I like that a great deal. Like it's to a it's simplistic to a genius degree. Like
Yes.
and like I said, just turning each page is, I did it digitally. In fact, I
Mm.
may, if I come across it somewhere for a reasonable price, I would
Oh
pick
yeah.
up this graphic novel in a heartbeat, because it just looks, you can just pour over it. Like you can read it and that's fine, but to pour over it as well is just and yeah, so I can, there's definitely that stinky whiff of teenage Nick's bedroom about it.
Oh yes.
And a lot of that stuff, it's funny actually across this, I realized that you really did in your teenage years. I only went for a little bit, but you really went for the wish fulfillment teenage
Oh
incest
yeah.
fantasy, incel,
Oh yeah.
not incest, sorry, fantasy
Yes.
thing. Well, I don't know, but
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
like I
Yeah.
realized that so many of your like you really went way down that rabbit hole, much
Yeah,
more.
yeah. I mean, and
But
Heavy Metal
this,
magazine was the place to go for that,
yes, yes,
right?
yes,
Because I mean,
yes,
it had
yes,
also had Druna. It had
yes, of
multiple
course, yeah.
other stories that were like in that vein of like, yeah, like
Yeah, no, this
very
didn't strike me. This is nowhere as spankable as Druna, but just as a good, great piece of art, and like I said, it's something you would like. Yeah, okay, good. It's good you've left the stinky bedroom now, but there's a
Mhm.
few choice items
Yes,
you
you
can
might
take
want to hang
with
on to.
you, and I
Yeah.
think this is one of them, right? Like,
Well, it's funny. Well, as I was reading it here, I started like putting on like kind of like space rock music, and just to add to the whole like the 70s and stuff at all. So like it's a great like stick some Hawkwind on or some like Jean-Michel Jarre, some kind of
mm,
like spacey proggy kind of, and yeah, just it because it does look
Osric
like,
tentacles maybe would work
oh
even if
yeah,
you.
because every panel looks like the front cover of some prog rock album from 1972,
Right.
right? So yeah, it is deeply satisfying. And yes, I definitely did knock a few out, no question. There's a scene near the end. It's got the best epilogue of all time. There's a scene near the end where, and in a way, we can talk about the plot of this when we talk about the adaptation in the movie, because in some ways, the heavy metal movie chunk of the
It's
Neverwhere chunk
very
is
different in tone.
it's yeah yes, and it's streamlined, but it is basically the same story told
Yes.
in
It's
a
faithful
more streamlined.
story-wise. The tone
Yes.
is different. Right.
Fundamentally different, yes. And
Yeah.
that's got to do with the voiceover narration,
Of
which we
John
can,
Candy specifically. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. The voiceover John kind of plus as well, it has that cheeky kind of I like in the film version when he turns out one of the first things he does, well, I'm not walking around with my
With
schlong
my dick
out,
hanging
and
out.
he gets it.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, okay, I like how you did that. Like,
Yes.
this isn't equal opportunities nudity in this version. There's a lot of tits, there's no schlong.
Yeah.
But again, it's tongue in cheek and fun about it, right?
Mhm.
So, um,
But I was going to say this,
yeah.
there's an epilogue. There's an epilogue that is my favorite part of the whole thing. And I remember as a 14-year-old boy and getting that issue of heavy metal with that section. So it's the section where the story's finished.
You were reading this in real time as it was published, then, were you?
No,
Or
no,
back
no. I was
issues?
buying back issues
Okay,
from,
okay.
because yeah, I couldn't buy actual porn, but you
Mm,
could get this like stuff that was like adjacent in comic
right.
book form. And the lady at the comic book store,
Druna filled the gap, as
yes.
it were.
So yeah, there's a section where the action is all finished, but somehow at the very end, Den gets captured again by the Queen, and he gets staked out.
Mm,
Like so, there's like, and then she goes down to prove her point that she still has power over him. She goes down on him,
mm,
and then this big fuck off bat creature with his like buxom girlfriend comes down to pull him up while she's still giving him head. And
right,
that section, those panels were just like,
right,
for
right.
me, I was just like, oh my
Yes.
God,
Talk about a conflict of interests.
this is the best thing I've ever seen. Like everything about this is glory. Um, so
In your denim jacket with your mullet.
yes, oh yeah, yeah. So I guess my question to you is, how did you avoid seeing 1981's Heavy Metal the movie?
I
Because to
don't
me,
know.
it
I
was an
don't
absolute
remember
rite
it
of
ever.
passage for a 14-year-old boy was that you go to the video shop or your
I
friend
don't
says
remember
you've
seeing the
got to
video
see.
around, and it certainly
Right.
was never on television.
Hmm.
I mean, I
Okay.
remember it being about, but again, for some reason, I moved on from that. Like, for
Mhm.
some, like I loved Slain, for example,
Right. Mhm.
and 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 and, but I didn't kind of that. I very briefly dipped my toes in that kind of because plus as well, I was never really into heavy metal.
The
I was
music
more
or the or yes, yeah. Although the movie itself, that the joke is, I mean, many heavy metal fans of the era were annoyed that there's actually not a lot of
no, no, no,
real
no.
heavy metal on the
But
soundtrack.
yeah, heavy metal. So because I think that was part of it. I think if you were into the metal, and if you were foolish enough to listen to Meatloaf, and then
Hmm.
that's part and parcel with the artwork stuff, and do you know, it's
Right.
all like, so that was
Sure.
all a bit too fucking denim and
You
melody.
you also you're a little bit younger than me as well. And so I
That's
suppose
true. Yeah.
so when I was 14, it was a different time than when you were 14.
Yes. Yes. Which,
Right.
in those years is like an epoch it can be, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
for
so
sure.
yeah, so things had moved on a little bit, I think, and we were more in Halo Jonesy
Right.
territory, maybe, which
Hmm.
that stuff hasn't
Aged well either,
particularly held
yes.
up particularly well. But it was just, yeah, it was just a different kind of but anyway, I did finally watch heavy metal now, and
So
I
here's my quick
uh,
mea culpa before
yeah,
I want you to talk about it more than I do. Um, so because I lack the critical distance to talk about
right.
it
Did you
because I
rewatch it?
oh yes, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Um, and I've that's the thing. Like I've seen the film countless times. Like I certainly back then as a teenager, I watched it dozens and dozens of times. And as I said, it served utilitarian purposes
Okay.
when I was 13, 14 years of age, right? And then I've probably watched it like once a year,
Oh, wow.
once every 2 years since. Like it's just
Really?
it
Wow.
shows up in my rotation. I always have a hankering to go back to it. Um, and so
Hankering for your wankering.
yeah, and so here's the mea culpa. The mea culpa is I know that it's maybe not very good. Like that some part of my brain is aware that like it or that it certainly has issues that it like it is aged in a way that like it's really sexist, right? There's no question about that.
We don't mind
And
that here.
certain sections of it also are stronger. Like it's as a whole piece, it's of mixed,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
absolutely. Yeah,
quality,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so I still, even at the time as a kid and now as an adult, the part that makes me most tired is the stuff that's more directly comedy or that's attempting to be comedy, like
Yes.
the whole Cheech and Chong aliens
Yeah, yeah. Which
section
I
is
think they were aiming for like a Dark Star thing, maybe, which is
yes.
interesting because Dan O'Bannon's involved in this as well, right? But
Definitely. And then the voice actors, I mean, because that's Harold Ramis and Eugene Levy doing the
hmm,
voices of the two aliens. And they're good. I noticed a lot of the voice acting is actually by the SCTV people, right? John
right,
Candy, right? But I noticed that neither Catherine, what's her name, O'Hara is nowhere to be seen, and
right.
the other one, Andrea, whatever her name was. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm going to
Martin.
stop there. Andrea Martin, yeah, yeah. They don't appear to have had it. It was a boys from SCTV
Right.
uh situation. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it there and
No, no, no.
you
To be
what you
honest, it
thought.
still holds up. And I can certainly see why it would have been revelatory when new. I understand why it was a cult phenomenon. And you're right, it does have its ups and downs. The Nadir being that Dark Star kind of rip-off
Yeah,
section, which is just like, what the fuck is this doing here? And
yeah.
that is the one as well with the most kind of um unnecessary fan service stuff.
Yes.
But
This
again,
yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
that's nothing compared to some other
Yeah.
stuff that we could, like the.
And have
You
talked
ever
about it.
watch the Agent Aika anime series?
No.
Oh, you should probably watch that. That is
Okay.
just like
Right.
fan service to a
Mhm.
degree, which is just fucking absolutely ridiculous. Like,
Mhm.
yeah. Or the more recent. Do you ever watch the Ikitosen series?
No.
Okay, that's another one. Like, holy shit, this is yeah. Anyway, um,
Okay.
but no, heavy metal is actually overall pretty good. I really enjoyed it, and definitely the
Not
highlight.
necessarily what I would have thought. It's funny. I thought it was either going to be an ambivalence or a full on like
No,
this is
no, no,
all
no.
okay.
Definitely the highlight though. The thing is that it peaks quite early because by
Yes.
far the best bit is the one based on Mobius is the Long Tomorrow, the Harry Canyon sequence.
Right.
Like
Yes.
that's just
Has to have been
excellent.
and it has to have been a major influence on
Repo Man.
well, the people and the Fifth Element.
Yes, but I think I have actually read Alex Cox say something about reading Heavy Metal magazine. The whole thing in the back of the car vaporizing
Yes.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but no, this is really, really good. Also, I noticed this sequence directed by Pino van Lansweerd,
Hmm.
who was the man who directed Asterix in Britain.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm interested. So and the intro, Jimmy T. Murakami, right? Who
Hmm.
also made Battle Beyond the Stars and went on to direct When the Wind Blows.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Cheerful.
there's some other, oddly enough, that shitty bit based on an Angus Mackay comic, the Cheech and Chong thing.
Yes.
The guy who directed that, John Hallis, he was involved in the 1954 Animal Farm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's some interesting people,
Mhm.
and the den sequence is really good, but
Yeah.
very faithful story wise. But as we said, mainly because of John Condy's voiceover, which is really good,
And he does two.
totally
So
changes the tone.
yeah, so he basically it introduces him as the teenage version of of the character. He goes through the thing pretty much as he does in the comic, becomes the man. So he changes his voice. So he does this teenage kind
Yes,
of voice, which he keeps up for anything that he's thinking. But then
yes,
when he speaks, he's got this manly. And yeah, it's funny. But neither voice immediately makes me think of John Candy.
no,
You have to strain to hear. He's you realize John Candy was quite a decent um, yeah, quite a decent voice actor. As you were saying, yeah, there's a lot more humor in
well,
that voiceover.
this iteration as well, it really goes for the teenage West remember thing, right? Because basically John
Oh,
Condy's character throughout is so thrilled because in the real,
hmm.
like this nebbish, and like he's just like, holy fuck, like there's all these hot women throwing themselves at me. This world is
Hmm.
awesome, and I'm big and buff, and like it's really
Yeah.
that, which actually is quite different from the comics.
Yes. Yeah.
If you want something closer to the tone of I mean, different again in a way, but
Mhm.
kind of closer, is Richard Corben's The Dark Planet, right?
Right.
Did you watch
Yes.
this?
Oh, I did. Yeah. What a
Fucking hell,
glorious
what the hell is this?
train wreck of what the
It's
fuckness that thing
fascinating,
is.
though. Were you
Um,
high when you watched it by any chance? I was wondering how.
I, I might have been, yeah, which
Yeah,
didn't help or did help. I'm not sure. I certainly
it's very.
maybe go with it. I think
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
made
No,
it look like I was like,
it's
okay,
so unfiltered, right?
hmm.
And I know it's made together from like different,
Yeah,
like
it's a composite of a couple of different
yeah,
things he did.
but you
Yeah.
wouldn't really be able to tell because it's so fucked and like
Yes.
no, I kind of admired it's just fucking uncompromising. I don't know how much I enjoyed it necessarily, but it
Hmm.
does have a little bit of the vibe of the comics, and it also
Hmm.
reminded me. Have you seen? Came out within the last few years. Have you seen Phil Tippett's Mad God?
No.
Uh, Going back to
Okay.
Alex Cox again, oddly enough, Alex Cox is in Mad God. He's like
Okay.
one of the only two human characters. Mad God is this stop motion epic that
Hmm.
Phil Tippett, right? The
Hmm.
FX guy, he did like
Yes.
09 and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So he basically he made this film on weekends over across like 30 years or something. And
Hmm.
it's finally now
Okay.
out there.
Wow. All
Uh,
right.
me and Robin talked about it on day release. It's really great.
Okay.
Love Mad
Okay.
God, but watching Mad God is a lot more straight up entertaining than
Right.
Dark Planet. But watching Dark Planet, I was like, I do wonder if this might have been a little bit of an influence on.
Hmm.
But there you go. Check out Mad God immediately because if you don't love Mad God, I will eat Werner Herzog's shoe.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's so it's like I mean, I don't even know where to start.
No,
with
I
Dark.
don't think we should. Just it's on.
All I'll say is
It.
that yeah, is there's a few things that really jumped out at me about it. One of them is like that some scenes or some moments or some frames you're like, well, that's really effectively done because it's an absolute shoestring,
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
pot yeah. And then yet every now and again there's a really arresting image or something,
Yes,
And other things are so chintzy looking that you're kind of like,
yes.
wow,
The
that's
monkey mask
awful.
man thing. But
Yeah,
narratively, what the fuck? Like
what's happening?
I
Yeah.
don't have a fucking clue. Um,
And I did like I'm a sucker for like really dodgy claymation, and that has
yeah,
lots of great
yeah.
little flailing
And
monsters.
after we watched that awesome adaptation of um what's his fucking Enki fucking um flood myth um
Oh yes,
Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh. Yes, yes.
I do like me some dodgy chroma key
Oh
as
yes, yeah.
well.
Some
It's a
yes.
it's a
Yeah, that very Doctor Who 1970s
right,
look.
right.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Um.
so Dark Planet is definitely of interest.
Mhm.
If yeah, I mean, check it out. You'll know basically from the beginning.
Yes.
Like if you're repulsed, watch no further because that's
Hmm.
pretty much it. But if you're
Yep.
intrigued, like I mean, it's like that all the way through, right?
And
So
it's
it's
virtually
suddenly,
silent, which is fascinating
yeah.
too. Like it's got no, it was it's not silent, but it's
That's
the
the other thing it has in
dialogue.
common with Mad God, actually, is that there's not much in the way of spoken dialogue or anything.
Hmm.
Like, but the difference between that and Mad God has a narrative that makes sense if you pay attention. And Dark Planet, I don't know if it does. It doesn't
No,
reward your patience necessarily with.
but
But
that's
back
one of
to heavy metal.
the.
The other sequence that is very good as well as the Hurricane one is the B-17 section, the
Yes,
Donovan.
yeah,
That
yes,
that's just that's properly
proper
like very
EC comics.
yeah, that yeah, exactly
Like
easy. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Um
and it's really
I
well done.
I did have a question for you being the and then finally Tana, I mean, it's closer
Yes,
to the Dungeons and Dragons bollocks that you'd expect this to like if it was all that,
yes,
I wouldn't have enjoyed this, right? But
yes, yeah. I mean, it has a few moments. It has a
it's
few
not
images
bad. It's not bad. And
that are
in
all
its
right.
place, it's fine,
And
right?
it's definitely strongly Mobius inspired as well, right? I mean, initially it was supposed to be an adaptation of Arzak or whatever, and then he
Right,
said, I
right.
don't want you to do that. But it's got some decent TNA. And
Here's
but
a
yeah,
question
you're
for
right.
you. I wasn't familiar with so there's the Captain Stern sequence, which is based on a Bernie Wrightson comic,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I
Do you know
wasn't
anything about that?
no, it's funny because Bernie Wrightson's work I really like, but I mostly know him from horror comics, right?
Right, Swamp Thing and stuff as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I wasn't aware he'd done some sort of semi uh I guess like comedy kind of space comic thing.
Right, and it's fine, but
Hmm.
it's a little bit,
Yeah.
Um, here's my question to you though: is taken overall, because again, I'm still someone I've had the revelation that is Druna's ass.
Hmm.
Used to me. Thank
Yes.
you very much, Nick. I
Hmm.
shall always be grateful for that.
Hmm.
But I still have yet to pick up issue of heavy
Heavy
metal comic.
metal. Hmm.
So, d- is this film? Is it quite a faithful approximation of what a typical issue of heavy metal or metal Hurlant would have been like?
No, no, and I'll say heavy metal to me was at its most interesting in the 80s when it was a magazine. So kind of like when we talked about not that long ago, maybe our last Prolix Comics Bollix actually we did the Hammers,
Yes.
right? Yeah, it was more like that in that there was more stuff in it than just comics, right?
Okay.
There were record reviews, there were film reviews, there were articles on other stuff, right? There was articles on novels that were coming out. Um, and there was more straight sex comics, more like Guido Crepax and stuff like that. It wasn't
Okay.
fantasy. That wasn't like, that was more like the story of O and things like that, like
Oh,
adapted.
okay, interesting.
So it was much more,
Sounds like my kind of comic, actually.
yeah, yeah, it was much broader than the movie really focuses on, I think, the
Yes,
science fiction side of things, which definitely
yes,
was there.
yes.
But it did have a broader
It's
purview.
weighted more heavily towards right.
Yeah. And so the thing is, it becomes that though after the movie and after so by the time the later 80s, the 90s are coming around, it is much more, and it's also it was more like 2000 AD in that it would be like 10 pages of something would continue on from issue to issue, whereas
Ah,
later on they started running like it would be 50 pages of just
right,
one thing, like
right.
and so which was good when it was Druna. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, you didn't have to wait for your hit. You got the entire book basically, like in one issue.
You'd have had to
Um,
pace yourself, I would have thought.
yes, could sprain a thumb. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I would say, yeah, I would go look at the mid 80s, the early to mid 80s metal or sorry, heavy metal comics or magazines. That's when it's at its most
So
interesting.
very early on, let's say like the first few issues or something, would it have just have been a straight up English language translation of the Metal Hurlant? Or
I
would it have
think from the
already been
get-go, I think from the get-go it had some stuff from there, but
okay?
then Metal Hurlant itself had some American
Right.
people like Richard Corben working for them. So it was always more of an international thing, even the French version, than just a
Okay.
French
Right.
or and then you have Italians like the guy who did the Ranzerox and
What's
Libertine.
his name write for it? Bilial.
Yes,
Ah, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, no, it's definitely something I need.
Jodorowsky. Lots of Jodorowsky in those
Ah, okay.
in those
I
80s runs as
definitely
well.
need to because it I'm sure there's and there probably is a best of anthology or something like that. I'm guessing it must be right. Some sort of
Yes, I would
collection
imagine
of
too.
graphic
If
novels.
we, would the Internet Archive probably not have? We should probably just look it up and see
Yeah,
if they
maybe.
have
Yeah,
it
yeah.
there.
But I'm
Um,
definitely interested, especially now that you mentioned that there's stuff like crep packs and stuff in there.
oh yeah,
So, yeah, so you were speaking about how later issues would devote themselves to entire, like, almost like graphic. So that brings us to, um, so apparently, the melting pot, which was
yes.
Kevin Eastman, Bisley,
Yeah.
and
So Kevin Eastman
yes.
bought Heavy Metal. So with it,
Ah, right.
so flush with his Teenage
Turtle
Mutant Ninja
money.
Turtles
Yeah.
cash, he bought Heavy Metal and then basically made it like his own kind of not quite vanity thing, but like he basically was in charge of choosing what would get published, and he was the one who kind of moved it over towards those more longer form. I'm going to publish a whole or most of a graphic novel coming from
Right. And is
Europe.
is is
And it
that
got
stuff?
much more fantasy. Then that's when it becomes truly, it's just a science fiction fantasy thing. It doesn't have all that
Okay.
interesting weirdness anymore.
Yeah, and they made Heavy Metal 2000, which have you ever seen it?
I struggled manfully when it came out back in 2000 or whenever
But
it came out.
struggled manfully in a different way to with Druna, right?
Yes,
It's a
yeah, yeah,
different
no.
kind of struggle.
I think everyone wanted to like it, and I think none of my friends liked it at all.
It's pretty awful. Yeah, so it's this, and also so the Kevin Eastman as well was of course married to Julie
Julie
Strain,
Strain.
right? And
Yes,
like the main character is clearly modeled
yes.
after Julie Strain and voiced by Julie Strain, who
Mhm.
died very young, sadly, right? She had something. She had. I can't.
Oh, okay. I think I'd forgotten
Yeah.
that. Yeah, okay.
So she was like a penthouse pet
Yeah.
turned scream queen, right?
Mhm.
Um, but no, with all the goodwill in the world and not wanting to speak ill of the dead as someone who died young, I mean, Heavy Metal 2000 is fucking
It's a
awful.
train wreck. It's a train
Yeah.
wreck.
Also with voices by Michael Ironside and
Well, at least
Billy Idol.
they kept the Canadian in
Yeah.
there with because I mean like the original film is very Canadian, the 1981.
Right. Right.
Like a number of the animation studios involved in making it were Canadian. In fact, the one that did the Harry Canyon section, I think also were the you remember the raccoons? Did you ever see the
Yeah, yeah,
raccoons?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they made that, and
Oh yeah,
so
Asterix in Britain. I mean,
yeah.
I might watch that tonight. That might be my Saturday night watch,
Okay.
is to go back to Asterix in Britain.
I haven't seen that in forever either. Um, but yeah. Oh,
Yeah, no,
those
it's
are
awful, and it's a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
non-anthology thing as well.
Hmm.
Right? It's just, yeah, it's
No.
all the worst elements of that kind of.
Yeah.
Um, it's not good. So we should also mention as well that in more recent times there has been the live-action anthology show Metal Hurlant Chronicles.
Yes, right. Which I think I've seen one or two episodes of.
I've
Um,
started watching it.
hmm
I'm 3 episodes in. It's not good.
hmm hmm
It's
That's what I
it's
remember.
yeah, no, it's the first episode in particular is based on a Richard Corben story actually about like some kind of a world which is a mixture of futuristic technology, but it's medieval because the king's hoarding all the technology. Scott
Right.
Adkins, it's pretty bad. But it was notable the second episode with Michelle Ryan, who was, if you remember, in 2000 something, there was an
Hmm.
attempt at reviving the Bionic Woman that only lasted like a
Oh,
few episodes.
yes.
So she was
Hmm.
the new Bionic Woman.
Okay.
So she's in an episode which the setup is pretty close to that film 10 Cloverfield Lane, if you
Oh,
ever.
yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
very, very, very similar.
Okay.
But yeah, so far Metal Hurlant Chronicle is sizing up to be shite.
Hmm.
Uh, French, Belgian, mostly shot in Romania, I think. But there's one other thing. So apparently, and I don't know, I haven't had a chance to watch this. You may know about it. I don't. But for years and years and years and years, they were trying to do like another heavy metal anthology show or something. I think David Fincher might have been involved.
Okay.
And as far as I could tell, like it's not an official, but as far as I can tell, that you know how these projects kind of mutate over time and sometimes turn into something else in the same way as UFO degenerated into Space 1999, right?
Right.
So apparently that long process of trying to do something with heavy metal eventually found its way mutating into there's a Netflix animated series called Love, Death and Robots.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Have you seen
Yes.
any of that?
Maybe I might have.
It
Yes.
obviously made a strong impression.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I don't remember. I think, again, I wanted to like it more than I did. It was one of those situations.
Right, I have not had a look at it yet, but anyway, it's
Or I
hoping.
read
I mean,
about it, and like the reviews were basically like, yeah, this is, yeah, it's
we're
not.
still waiting for the animated Druna,
Hmm.
and at which point me and Nick will never need to leave the house ever again. Um,
But here's a question for you. Do you think, because this, like Den
yeah,
and actually Tarna for that matter at the end when she like raises her sword up and like lightning hits and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff that I feel like Masters of the Universe.
well,
For
Tana's definitely Shira, I thought.
She-Ra, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And Den in a way is kind of like a He-Man figure in that like, I mean,
yeah,
he, you know, and yeah, it's just funny for me to think that yeah, there was a kind of kiddie like the He-Man and She-Ra are kind of kiddie versions of
yeah. Well, in that case, I think the only way we can end, Nick, is if you just look down.
hmm
Imagine a dwarf has just landed upside down in a bucket of water.
Ah,
Has just stepped out and is now shaking himself dry.
hmm